All right, g'day everyone and welcome to Department of Education, Victorian Department of Education and Training's collaboration with Microsoft on remote learning webinar number 6. So this is teacher collaboration in Microsoft Teams. My name is Troy Waller. I am a learning delivery specialist from Microsoft Australia Education, which is a kind of fancy way of saying that I am a former teacher. Draw your attention to the fact that this is webinar number 6. And we have tried to deliver these webinars in a sequential order that they kind of build on each other. So if you haven't seen any of our other webinars, I do suggest that you pop back to our webinar repository, which is where we're keeping everything, and I'll share that link with you a little bit later on where you can actually go back and access all those. Want to draw your attention to, again, the launch page, landing page, launch page for Microsoft Remote Learning in Australia. It's aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. So please jump in there and have a look. There's some stuff there for teachers, school leaders, IT professionals, etc. So I think you'll find it's really quite a good website. So again, jump in and have a look. All right, so let's have a look at our agenda. So I'm going to take you back to the Microsoft Educator community, as I always do, because this is your online portal for teacher learning. And then I'm going to share with you about creating your school team. We're going to look at channels, posts, files, tabs, and apps. We're going to talk about how you manage your team, talking about setting notifications, Teams meetings, next steps, and then of course we'll end with a bit of Q&A. And I'll try to remember to stop working through this webinar as well to sort of field some questions. This webinar is different to the others because this is actually looking at a whole school approach to using Teams. In our first webinar, where we looked at Teams for a class, it was really sort of individual teachers with individual classes, whereas this is all about how you as a school are going to communicate with each other in terms of staff, right? So your staff, teams, file sharing, all that kind of thing. Because the thing that struck me is for a lot of schools, when you start working from home and working remotely, you're going to lose access to your shared drive. So what happens with a lot of schools is they've got this shared drive, whether it's called Q Drive, P Drive, Elemento, whatever drive, and you've got that drive, and on there all the files and folders that everybody sort of, has sort of built up over the years. And oftentimes it's a bit of an Amazon jungle of files, but you probably know exactly where the things you want are living and how to access them. But once you leave that school environment, then for most people, those shared drives don't have any sort of remote access. So I'm going to share with you today about how you could possibly build an environment in the cloud that everybody could access. So if you are a school leader, if you are, an AP or a principal or a curriculum coordinator, please pay close attention because this is for you. If you're not, then I do suggest that you certainly tune in, pay close attention, because I'm going to show you how you can use it as a teacher, but I want you to share this one, definitely share it back to your principals and vice principals, etc., just to those key decision makers in your school, because I think this is really going to make a big difference to you. Because otherwise you're going to be isolated from your files, isolated from staff. So I really want to share with you some of the cool things you can do. All right, so remembering that our landing page for online PD is education.microsoft.com. education.microsoft.com. Really quickly, and I mean really quickly, I am going to take you in and show you this here. Remember, we've got the courses that live in here. We've got learning paths, which are groups of courses as well. Don't forget to sign in, so it'll keep a record of all the online professional development that you do. I do want to remind you, when I click here on Browse Courses and I come in here and I type in Teams, because that's what we're focusing on today, this course here, Collaborate Faster Using Microsoft Teams for Higher Education Staff. I know it says higher education staff, but there's some really good stuff in there for us in K-12 as well. All right, so that's the course that I want you to visit at the end of today, because a lot of what I'm talking about today is actually referenced and resourced on there. There's also some other really good courses. There's one here all about Teams, which is looking at teachers working together in teams, and then this Teams course here as well. So if you're just going to do one course, then I really want you to jump into this one here, all right, because that's really what we're focusing on today. All right, let's keep moving. So remembering that office.com is where we're going to start from. So it's www.office.com, and then we're going to click on Teams, which lives over here. You can use the Teams app if you've already downloaded the Teams app, that's fine. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, signing into office.com, remembering for those of you that are outside of the Department of Education in Victoria, you can just use your email address and your password. For those of us that are inside the Department of Education, it's your TO number at education.vic.gov.au, and that's how we access the department's central Office 365 environment. If you're in a department school that has their own 365 environment, then you're possibly going to just use your normal email address, whatever you use for school. But if you're using EduMail and you're using the department central tenant, then you sign in using your TO at education.vic.gov.au. And again, that will bring you back to this start page here, office.com. Okay, so let's talk about the hub. Okay, which is Teams. And if you've done my first webinar, we sort of went through this a little bit before and talking about students, but for us as teachers, it's still very much the same environment. We're just going to use it differently. So we can still have calls, video calls and voice calls. We can have chat, of course, and we can also set up our Teams environments, and that's what we're going to look at, as I said, today. You can bring your whole Office 365 experience into Teams. Remembering I did that webinar for you on Office 365. I think it was our second webinar, maybe our third, and we talked all about how all the apps and everything that we love about Office can actually come inside of Teams. We'll have a little bit of a look at that again today. And then the third-party apps as well. Remember, we can bring those apps that we love, whether it's Kahoot or YouTube or other things as well, Wakelet and Flipgrid, even Wikipedia has a dedicated app. And then, of course, there's the assignments features, right? So that's when we're working directly with students. Now I'm just going to try and get rid of this because that's flashing away. All right, there we go. So what I'm going to do is, again, because I make these slides available to you, I think it's really important that I make this slide available to you so you can access it. I'm not so much going to talk to it now as much as I'm going to take you in and I'm going to show you the inside of Teams, because I want you to get an understanding of the anatomy and how it all works and where everything sits. All right, so I'm just going to jump into Teams. So if I was in Office 365, I could click on my Teams icon and I could launch. I could also, as I said, be using the Teams app, but in this case, I'm going to bring us all in to my Teams environment. So this is a primary school environment that we've created. We called it Murray Street. And you can see here we've got a staff team, we've also got a leadership team, and then we've got all the class teams, right? And now they could be renamed whatever you want them to be, but in this case, that's how we've set them up. So when I come into my Teams environment, you can see here I've got an activity tab, and my activity tab is going to actually show me all the notifications, right, that are coming through to me. Now, this is a demo environment, so I don't have any, but those of you that are in Facebook, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's just basically your notifications tab. I've got chat for private chat. I can click on Teams there, and that's how I see all my teams or my individual teams. We've got the assignments feature, which you can look at our first webinar, and also our assessment webinar if you want to find out about that. The calendar is for integration with Exchange Online. Those of you that are in the the Victorian Department of Education, you're not going to see that calendar app because your email is still on premises up at Treasury Place. It's not online yet, but for the rest of us, you'll see that calendar app. And then, of course, we've got our calls and also our ability to see our own OneDrive files. All right, so that's what lives in there. Now, let's keep moving along with that. I want to talk about the different ways that we can experience Teams across devices. So the first thing I want to point out is the desktop app. So if you're on a PC, you're running Windows or Linux, or you're on a Mac, you have a dedicated app that you can download. And when you open up the Teams app, there's ways to download that. Also, we have dedicated tablet apps, whether that's an Android tablet you're using, or whether that's an iPad and iOS, and the same goes for the phones as well. So we have dedicated apps. So that means that you can have video calls, voice calls on your phones, and you can also access a lot of the other Teams features through your phones, which is great, especially when you're on the move, out doing your exercise. The other one is the browser. Okay, so you can actually access the Teams app through the browser, whether you're using Microsoft Edge, whether you're using Chrome, Safari, or even Firefox, you can access it. And there's how we download the Teams app if that's what you want to get. It's aka.ms/get Teams, but you can also access it through the web app. Now let's think about creating our school team. So there are two types of teams that are perfect for college faculty and staff, the staff team and the anyone. Microsoft Teams can support up to 5,000 members in each team, all right? Everything is possible within Teams. So you can communicate effectively through conversations, chats, online meetings, calls, and web conferencing. You can work collaboratively in a OneNote notebook, Office 365 apps like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and other files and apps. And also you can customize your workspace with Microsoft third-party apps as needed, which is what we talked about before. Now you can see here that there's two kinds of teams that I have highlighted. There's the class team that we use when we're working with students, but over here we've got the staff team and the other or anyone team, right? So it's important to note that a staff members team should only be created if you'd like a staff notebook with private sections. So that's this one here. So that creates a staff notebook, which is similar to a class notebook. This one over here doesn't, right? But what I would recommend probably for your staff team is you're actually going to use the other kinds of team there. All right, so most often staff collaboration is better done in that other team because it provides a more flexible notebook for school staff. So collaboration is an excellent way that Microsoft Teams can save your school staff time and effort. And with Teams, everything needed for all the academic departments in a school to work together is all there in the one environment. So remember, when you start to create your team, you're actually going to create, I would suggest that you actually create an other team, even though staff team looks like the ones that you'd actually want to create. All right, let's keep moving. So talking about teams and talking about structure and purpose, our suggestion to you is the first thing that you want to create as a school is an all staff team. All right, so this provides a central place for all staff to communicate and collaborate. It provides a location for secure file storage and sharing, and it gives you channels to focus on with different domains of interest. So the first thing we want to create is an all staff team. Our next recommendation to you is that you probably want to create a leadership team as well. So this is a separate team away from the all staff team. So that provides a central place for all leadership to communicate and collaborate. It provides a location for sensitive file storage and sharing away from the rest of the school. And you can also have private channels to ensure confidentiality and specific topics. And then the last thing you're going to want to create is your class teams, right? So again, go back to our first session to learn all about class teams, but they provide a central place for personalized teaching and learning. They provide a location for curriculum resources, learning engagements, etc. All right. And as you can see there, support the distance and online delivery of curriculum. The other thing too is, and this is more sort of technical, but you have the full Office 365 aggregation, Groups, SharePoint, OneNote, OneDrive, Stream, and Planner all in there as well, but it's cloud-based, and that means it's accessible anywhere on any device. So you don't need to be near to the school, and people can be collaborating and sharing just like we've seen in our other workshops, but they can be doing that as a team of staff rather than talking about working with the kids. And then there's full enterprise security and compliance as well. So there's all that sort of techie stuff down there, which shows that it's actually very, very secure. All right, now the other thing we've got to think about is channels, right? So what I might do before I jump into that, I might just take you into the team, and I'm going to show you here. This is the staff of Murray Street team. So this is that first one that we created. All right, and you can see that when we go into the staff of Murray Street, down here, I've got channels. Now, when we built this is just a demo. There is no Murray Street Primary, or if there is, it's got nothing to do with us. And you can see there that I built these channels, and they largely reflect what a shared drive at your school might look like. All right, so we've got an AEU channel, we've got the ES staff, which is our support officers, we've got facilities and grounds channel, library, parent communication, etc. All right, and so all these different channels, when we click on them, so for example, if I come and click on, let's go into grade 6. So if I click on year 6, you can see that there's a chat that's going on in here. All right, so everyone can chat with each other that are following along in year 6, and then we've also got the ability to store our files. All right, so if I'm looking for anything to do with year 6, I can jump in there and I can see all my files. Now remember, once upon a time, this would have been kept on your shared drive, but now it's kept in the cloud. So it's wrapped in Teams, it's wrapped in the chat, and all that cool stuff that we can do with Teams, but it's accessible from anywhere. And you can see up here as well for grade 6, I've got their grade 6 Compass page. I can also have the curriculum documents. I could also have other Word documents and other things that I can bring in as well, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what it looks like though is to add a channel, all we need to do is just click on these ellipses here, and then we come down here and we click add channels. So I want you to think of channels as a place for large bodies of work or specific needs or topics. Each team starts with a general channel. All right, every channel comes with its own conversations and posts tab, files tab, and apps, which is what we just looked at then. And the general channel in a staff member's team will also have a staff notebook, but if you create an anyone team, that won't be there. So working with channels, you can easily add more channels to your team as needed. So you can see here, you just click on the ellipses and you just add channels, and you can build that out as you need it. All right, you then need to name your channels, and you notice that when you create a channel, each channel automatically comes with that posts tab up here so that we can have conversations in each channel. So that means that our year 6 conversations are moved away from our year 1 conversations, but because we are here in a whole staff team, if I'm in year 6 and I want to see what year 5 are doing or have a conversation with them, it's easy for me. I can jump straight into that channel. So it's not about having separate places away from each other. It's about having separate places that we can all access. So it's the best of both worlds. All right. Now I mentioned before we've got the files tab, and the place for additional apps. And so maybe your team, your year level team, whether that's grade 6 or grade 1, they're looking to develop a new course of study, and the channel is a great way to keep that all separate from everybody else, but also easily accessible from everybody else. And so everyone that can see it is now able to weigh in on that, right? But the other thing too is there's a lot of channels here, right? So you may want to hide some of those channels because they're not relevant to you, all right? So all you do is you just click on the channel, and you can see I've got a little bit of a box up here, but I'd click on the channel and then I can hide that channel, all right? So if I come back into my real team, what I can show you is if I wanted, let's say I'm in year 6 and year 1's not relevant to me, I can click on that button there, and then I hide that channel, right? And I hide all the irrelevant channels to me, all right? But what I can also do, and this lives down in hidden channel, if it is relevant to me, I can click back and I can put it as show, and then it'll appear in my list. So even though we've got all these channels, for me as a teacher coming in, not all those channels are going to be relevant. That's fine. I'll just hide them. All right, so it's really important to know that while we have a lot of channels, we don't necessarily have to see them or be confused by too much that's going on. All right, let's keep moving. So in terms of the staff of Murray Street, this is the way that we set this up, right? So we set it up as having all these channels that are relevant to the different domains in the school. So you can see we've got things like the consultative committee, the staff association, the well-being committee, maybe called a PLT, English, etc. So even though I am part of the year 1 team, I may also be part of the well-being team. I may also have something to do with the library, etc. And so, I want to make sure that I keep those files shown. Now, most of this I'm sharing with you so you can have the slides and go back and use these as references. But you can see here, I've actually given what the channels are for and what their purposes are for. Now, you don't have to recreate, when you create yours, you don't have to recreate it like this, all right? You can just use this as a template from which to jump from, okay? But when we look at the leadership team and the leadership channels, you can see there we've got things like finance and human resources and these kinds of things. And a lot of those teams can actually have hidden channels. And let me show you what I mean by that. So when I come into my leadership, okay, now you can see these are actually private channels, which means that only people that I invite into those channels can actually access them, because they may have very sensitive files and sensitive data in there as well. So however you want to set that up is cool. Now, if I was looking at this as a principal, and Victoria Principal is our principal, you can see that when she follows the all staff team, she doesn't follow all the channels. She only follows the channels that are relevant to her. So she's not she's not overwhelmed by 17 channels. She's actually just seeing the 10 or whatever that she's actually following. And then when she's in the leadership, she's following all of them because she's overseeing the leadership of the teams of the school. And of course, she's not got classes herself. So this is what it looks like for her when she opens up Teams. So you see down here, there's 11 hidden channels. She can still access those if she wants to, but she's just going to be more following the channels that are relevant to her. All right, let's talk about the posts, right? So when we're inside Teams, we have the ability to actually chat and talk to one another inside those channels that are relevant to us. So here we are in year 6. So the post tab in the Teams appears in the general channel, but as well as any other additional channels that you create. All members can view and add to conversations in the general channel, and in other channels, they can use what's called @mention to invite specific staff to participate in a conversation. So what I mean by that is if I come back into this channel here, if I wanted to draw someone's attention, let's go back into the whole staff team. And let's say that I wanted to draw someone's attention to something that's going on in parent communication, but I know that that person may not be following that channel there. So what I can do is I can @mention them, and then I start to type the person's name. So this is Art Garfunkel. He's our art teacher. And when I click on that, he's now going to actually get a notification up here when I say to him, Art Garfunkel, I could say, Art, have you got your resources ready? Okay, spelled it wrong, but anyway, so Art will now get a notification up here. Now I might want to draw the entire channel's attention, right? So everybody that's showing that channel, I want them all to see that. So I @mention, and then I start to type the word channel, and as I do, the channel that I'm in will actually highlight. Now everybody will get a notification. But if I want to draw the entire team, if I want to draw their attention, I can @mention team, staff of Murray Street Primary. Now everybody that's a member will get a notification whether they're following that channel or not. All right, so if any member wants to begin a conversation in any channel, as long as it's not private channel, then they can do so. All right, so what that's going to do is that's going to stop us from sending so many emails, right? Instead of just hitting that sort of DL whole school, we can actually go and @mention up here in the general channel, and people can be having their conversations, right? So you don't have to worry about whether all the necessary parties were included, and you just start a conversation, and then people that are following that channel, hopefully they're the ones that are interested in what's going on in that channel. Well, then they're going to get they're going to see it and they're going to be notified. All right, so that's how we use the posts. Now in terms of files, which is our next little tab across, we see the files area here. All right, so what I'm going to do for you, I'm going to show you. I'm going to come up here into grade 6 again, or down here into grade 6. I'm going to come into files, and you can see that what's happened here for this grade 16, they've actually built some root directories there. So if you want to know about student wellbeing, go in there. If you want to know about assessment and reporting and the curriculum and all that kind of thing, you can set this up however you want. All right, but what's really cool about this is This is where you just need someone to grab all those year 6 documents, all those year 6 folders, and cut and paste them into Teams. And you can do that via SharePoint, makes it quite easy, and bring your entire shared drive into the cloud. And by bringing it into the cloud, it means now it's accessible to everybody from home, no matter where they are. All right, now the other thing is when I'm inside here, I can easily create new folders, but I can also create Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoints, etc., all from inside here, and it's going to use those browser apps inside Teams. I can also add my cloud storage. Now that means I can bring in existing SharePoints that I maybe have in another part of the in the cloud. I can bring those in, but I can also bring in things like Dropbox and Google Drive and those things as well. So if your school has already gone down the Google path, you can actually bring that into Teams as well. You don't need to have an either or. And the other thing to remember too is the ability to collaborate. All right, so when I open up a new document, for example, like if I was opening up a new Word document, and why don't I do that now? Let's call it Today Test, and then I'm going to open that up. And you can see what happens is right inside Teams, that document can be collaborated on. We could be seeing what each other are doing in real time. So, you know, we'll have those little flags and people working across their documents at the same time inside the cloud. So no more emailing documents to each other. Everything lives in our space. Now look what happens when I come back into my shared drive space. There's my document. So of course I could have opened any of these folders and created it in there, or I could even move it now. All right, so in this case, I'm actually going to delete that one, but it's really easy to do. Okay, it's just like you would do on your shared drive, except it's in the cloud and we can all collaborate. Now, in terms of those apps that I showed you that you can bring those apps in, okay, so you can bring in your Microsoft apps as tabs across the top, and you can also bring in your third-party apps. Now, let me take you and show you in here. So when I click on this, so I'm in my year 6, I can bring in, as I showed you before, my Compass start page. I can bring in curriculum documents. Anything that's a website can actually live as a tab across the top. But I can bring in, you know, Microsoft Forms and OneNote and SharePoint. Please go back and have a look at our earlier webinar. But you can also see a whole heap of third-party apps as well that you can bring in. And what they do is they create these little tabs across the top, and there's nothing permanent about these. I can just click on it. I can open that up like that. Okay, you can see there's somebody who's working on a document, and this document might be important. Even though we could find it in files, we'd have to hunt through, but because we're using it all the time, we just pin it as a tab. And I'm actually going to rename that one because Word isn't so great. I'm going to call it Term for Week 6, and we know that that's our curriculum document that lives inside. Oops, excuse me. That's our curriculum document that lives up at the top there. And then, you know, when we've had enough of it, that's okay. We can just remove it. Okay, let's keep going. So managing your team, this is really important, all right, because this is what you will need to be able to do to make sure that everyone has the best experience. So again, what we do is we come over to these ellipses here, we click on Manage Team, and then it opens up our management portal. But the team owners, that is if you are an owner of a team, not just a member, you have control over the members' permissions. All right, so member permissions are easy to change or amend at any time by checking or unchecking these boxes next to each permission. I'm going to take you in and share that with you in a moment. The owner has the ability to make these changes to benefit a smooth running of the team. To change permissions from the default setting, you click the ellipses over here, which is next to the team name, and you click on Manage Team. And then as I said, any of those boxes can be checked or unchecked to allow or restrict members from doing these things that we've got in there. In the general channel, the owner can allow or restrict anyone from posting messages, etc. So let's go in and just have a little look at what that looks like. So I just click on these ellipses, and then I want to manage the team. Now remember, only the owners can manage the team. First thing I can do is I can manage the members. All right, so I can change these guys from owners down to members, or from members up to owners, which means that they have more access. Has anyone made a request to join the team at this time? At this time, no, but if they did, that's where they would be. I can also manage my channels, all right? So do I want to rename my channels? Do I want to add channels? Do I want to make sure that these channels are showing for everybody? Okay, but of course they get the option, as we said before, to hide them, but I might say these channels are important. I might click a couple of these. The other thing, I'll come back to settings in a moment, we have analytics. There's some very basic analytics in here that you can actually see what people are doing across the team, and you can measure you know, how well your team is being used. And then of course we've got the ability to access those apps as well. Over here in settings, this is what I wanted to share with you before. I have the ability to set the team picture, which we already have. I can set the member permissions. Now, as a team owner, do I want people to be able to create and update channels? Maybe not. I don't want this to just become, you know, crazy that everyone's creating channels all the time. So I can switch that off so that members can't do so. Do I want them to be able to delete channels, etc., etc.? All right, so you can check and uncheck those according to what you want to do. Guest permissions. Guests are people outside your organisation. In the Department of Education, that has been disabled, so you can't bring guests, but if you're in an independent or Catholic school, you may find you can bring your parents in to different teams. At mentions, so being able to at mention, which we looked at before, you can turn that on or off. You can also set a team code, which means that you can email that to people or make it available to them in some other way, and then they can actually punch that code in. We don't have to add everybody. And then of course we've got the controls over the emojis, the giffies, stickers and memes, and that kind of stuff as well. All right, so that's your settings for the entire team if you're an owner. All right. So the other thing is notifications, because the thing is teams can get very noisy, right? Just like you can get bombarded with emails, you can be bombarded with Teams notifications. So we want to be able to minimize all that unnecessary noise and make sure we're only getting notifications that are relevant to us. We want notifications from the channels that we follow and not from everything else, but settings should be personal. So there's a few policies that you can set as an owner, so that, as a Teams manager, so that it can so that everybody, you know, the notifications are set, but really it needs to be done at a personal level. So let me show you how you do that inside Teams. So when you are inside Teams, you come up here to your little profile icon, and this is where you download the app, by the way, if you want the desktop app or the mobile app. But we're going to click here on settings. Here's where you can set your dark mode, high contrast mode, or default mode, but we're going to go over here to, and the other thing too is set your language, and I do suggest that you set your language to English Australia, but we're not going to restart. And then you come in here to notifications. Now, my suggestion, and this is just my suggestion, is that you reduce these. Certainly you don't want to be getting emails every time something happens in Teams. What I've done in my personal Teams notifications is I have made sure that everything is at the lowest, right? So either a banner or only show in feed. And then when it comes down to the missed activity emails, set that as daily, which means once a day you will get an email telling you the things that you missed in Teams. Trust me, you don't want to be getting it as soon as possible, because every time someone does something in Teams, you'll get an email. Once every 10 minutes, once every hour, too much. My suggestion to you is you set it down to daily, right? Now, remembering though, when you follow a team, then you're going to get announcements. Sorry, when you follow a channel, you're going to get announcements. That is when you show a channel. When you hide a channel, then you will remove those notifications, all right? But you can also set channel notifications just specifically for each channel, all right? So again, it's about you getting in and working out how you're going to use this and what works for you. Okay, so that's notifications. Now remember, this is a video that you can access later, and you can come back and use this as a reference, but I'm going to give you some other references that you can use. Let's talk about team meetings. Now remember, Teams has a video platform as well. Okay, so it has video calls that you can schedule, and that you can also start from within Teams. All 250 staff can have a video on at once. So if you've got 250 teachers in your school, they can all be in the same video call. All right, now you can see here we've got 4 people on the screen. What's just been announced is you can now have 9 people on the screen, 3 by 3 at once, and everybody else will actually sort of fall down here. And as people talk, then they will move into view, and you can also pin people as well. Now you can have a Teams meeting by scheduling a meeting, and you can also mute participants. You can change people's status. You can downgrade them to attendees, or you can upgrade them to presenters, so they can get in and access that. If you want to see demos of what the Teams calls look like, please go back to the first webinar and have a look at that. But it's a great platform. I like to joke that it's Skype on steroids because it's a much more powerful platform. You can record your meetings, so if people are away, if you started a meeting, and I'll show you what I mean. If we start a meeting over here in, let's start one in the year 1, so let's say our year 1 team are having a video, the video meeting, they can just come down here and click on that. That's gonna, you're gonna see me appear in a minute. Oh, I've got my camera's actually at the back. Let me turn that around. There we go. So there's me, and then I can meet now. So when I start my meeting, I would actually see everybody across there, not just myself, everybody that's in the meeting. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to turn my video off, but I want to share with you some of the cool things you can do. So you can share your screen, so you can share whatever you're previewing, whether that's a Microsoft Whiteboard, whether it's your desktop, whether it's PowerPoint slides, that can all be shared. You can also change the status of the people inside your call, which is what I said you could do before. But I want to share with you how you can show your device settings. Showing your device settings is cool because it lets you just make sure that you're coming through the right speakers, your microphone's working, all that kind of stuff. I can also show the meeting notes, so we can actually start taking notes specifically for that meeting. The meeting details, if it's been scheduled somewhere, would be in there as well. And I can also, as I said before, I can also start recording that meeting. All right, so that meeting is now, or in a moment, you see it's going to kick in, little red light's going to come on, and then it's actually going to start recording. And then what will happen is at the end of that meeting, that recording will live inside my Teams channel. We've got chat as well, so we can have real-time chat whilst, back channeling while the meeting's happening. And if I stop that video now, forgive me, stop that recording. Yep. And now when I hang that up, I'm going to say that was great. I really don't know, but I'm going to pretend it was. Come back into my Teams. You can see in my Teams channel, the recording is stopped, and now that meeting is actually being saved into Microsoft Stream. So I can access it through Stream, which lives in Office 365, or I can access it right from inside the Teams channel here. Okay, so moving on, tell you a little bit more about the way it integrates with Stream. As we saw, it automatically uploads to the channel. There's automated closed captions as well. So when you're inside a video chat, you can have real-time captions happening during the call. So if you've got a lot of noise happening around you, you can actually have the captions running, but at the end, it will also create captions inside the stream recording. There's a searchable transcript as well. You can have 500,000 videos in Stream, and each video can be up to 50 gigabyte, which is pretty amazing. The other thing I want to stress to you is that because Teams runs across your devices, you can be in meetings on your phone, on your iPad, etc. All right, so you're not just locked in to the you're not just locked into your PC or your Mac. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to stop there because I know I've done a lot of talking, and I just want to see if there's been any questions that have been thrown our way. Anna, anything about what we've talked about so far?
Yeah, I've actually been getting a lot of questions about how to mute students while they are in a meeting, and yeah, sure. Also this one is
okay. Well, let's do that one first, Anna, and then we'll come back to the other one. So when you are inside a meeting, let me just start another meeting. If you've already started the meeting and you want to mute students, it's a little bit difficult for me to show you here, but I'll share the link for where you can find out where that is. That your students will actually be listed here. If I click on the little show or hide participants button, my students will actually be down here if they were in the call. And then I click on the ellipses, and what happens when I click on the ellipses is it will actually give me the option to mute students and also to reduce the students to attendees. And now when they're attendees, they can't mute anybody else. They can't kick other people out of the call. But if you are outside of the department space and you can see your calendar app, when a calendar tab, when you schedule a meeting, okay, so let's pretend I'm going to schedule this meeting now. Okay, I'm going to call that today's meeting, and I schedule that meeting now and I save. It appears here, and then what I want to do is when I click on that, oh, forgive me. Sorry about that. What happens is I can go back into that meeting and then I can actually set the status of the people that are coming into that meeting. But what I'll do is I'll share a link with you about how you can actually do that. But for most of you inside the department, you're not able to do that because you haven't got the calendar app running. Anna, next question.
Yes, next would be, how do we add an existing folder from the whole school SharePoint to Teams channel?
Sure, good question. So what you would do is you would decide where that's going to be, okay, which channel it's going to live in, come into Files, and then you will add cloud storage, all right? So when you add cloud storage, you can add a SharePoint site, right? So you just grab the SharePoint link and put it in. Now, the thing you've got to be careful of is making sure that your SharePoint site lives in the cloud, because if it lives on premise at the school, then you won't be able to access it because you're not on the school grounds, right? Unless you've got remote access. So as long as you've got something that you can access, then you can bring it into Teams just like that. So again, what you do is you just, inside the file section, add cloud storage, and then add your SharePoint.
Alrighty, next up would be, is there a way to do an audio only call with your whole class because they don't want to be, they don't want the students to be able to turn the camera on?
As far as I know, if you were to, you can actually do, if you've got telephony set up by your school through Teams, then you can just do voice only calls. However, most of you are not going to have that. So yeah, so when you come into a video, when you come into a call, the students have the option to turn their video on and off.
Alrighty, next would be, are the captions translatable in other languages?
At the moment, no, but it's definitely on the roadmap that soon we'll have real-time translations in the video calls.
Alrighty. When you stop the recording, can you title or rename the meeting that was recorded?
You can, but you need to go into Microsoft Stream to do that. But just remember that when you look at it in the channel, so if we come back in here into our, actually we're in year one for that video chat, weren't we? It's just gonna be called meeting here. But if I was to open that in Microsoft Stream and letting that load, that's when I have greater control, and that's when I can rename and edit and do all those kinds of things as well.
Alrighty. So next one is a good one. I would like to invite a guest speaker to our Teams meeting. Can you invite an external person?
That depends on your 365 tenant and how that has actually been set up. So what I mean by that is the department has disabled you being able to invite guests into Teams meetings inside the channels, but if you're on an independent school or a school that has decided to run their own tenant, then that certainly can be done.
All right, next one is a good one as well. When you schedule a meeting, is there a way to easily invite all the members of a channel without having to type them in individually?
Yeah, definitely. So if I wanted to schedule a meeting, so let's go into calendar. So remembering, if you're in the department tenant, you're not able to do this. but for the rest of us, we can. What you do is you just make sure that you add the meeting to the correct channel. Just hit here and add channel, and then it will actually appear. And then all the students inside that class team, this won't work for your staff team, but all the students inside that class team, it will appear in their Outlook folder, in their Outlook calendar, I should say, ready for them to join. So if you want, though, to draw staff attention, then you're probably best to actually throw in your DL groups or your individual staff members in through there.
Alrighty, so if you record an online video call, can you save it? Can you download it?
Yep, sure. So that's what we just looked at before. So when you open it in Stream, it can be downloaded, but only by the team owner.
Alrighty. Okay, so this is very similar to earlier question as well, but I don't want students to ever have their video enabled. Can I disable it?
At the moment, no.
Yeah. Alrighty. Sorry, there's just so many questions.
Sure. Actually, let me clarify on that one. There are policy settings that can be done by the person that manages your team's portal. So that's probably, if you're in a department school, that's going to be people in the department. So they could disable video chats for students, but that would disable the audio chat as well. But at the moment, they haven't done that. So at the moment, if you're inside the Office 365 tenant of the department, then definitely it's the video is accessible to everybody.
Okay. Could we stop students scheduling meetings? Now we can't do it, but students can, so they are doing it.
Yeah, right. Okay. So again, that's the department decision around, what's enabled and what's not. We are currently working on policy recommendations to tenants around setting these kinds of things up. So watch that space and reach out to the IT department at your school, and we will be publishing those whole school policies very soon.
Alrighty. Ooh, this is a good one. Can you import an existing file structure into a channel?
No, but what you can do is you can recreate that, right? So let's have a look. So if I'm inside here and then I wanted to go into my file section and I want to upload, there you go. You can bring in an entire folder, right? So if you have that set up somewhere, you would bring the root directory and bring that in like that. Okay, so the answer is yes, but you just have to fiddle with it a little bit, if that makes sense.
Alrighty. Now, what would be the next question? Can you delete a meeting in Teams? To clarify, once it has been deleted on Streams, can you remove that post from the Teams page?
Well, good question. So when you remove it from the from Stream, it is no longer accessible in here. All right. So what you'll find is there may be for a little while there may be sort of a relic there, but it's not accessible. So you are in essence removing the meeting, even though the post may sit there.
All right. This will be a little bit of a recap. But how do I link my class notebook to my team?
How do you link your class notebook to your team? You can't link your existing class notebook, okay? Mm-hmm. What you can do, though, is you can create a new class notebook and bring in all your materials over. Let me share with you, there's a really good link for you, and that is, just come into your favorite browser and you can say, I just do it like this. I look up this article like this, existing class notebook in Teams. Okay, and then you can, there's an article comes right up the top there, set up a class notebook in Teams using existing content, right? So, or add an existing class notebook to Teams. Those are the two articles that we'll talk you through. It's a little bit fiddly, but not impossible. All right, so I think what we're going to do there, Anna, is we're going to actually call it. I'm just going to take everyone through the next steps, and then we'll say goodbye. So education.microsoft.com, that is your professional development portal. There's some great courses around Teams and great courses around setting up your school team. Remember, it calls itself the Higher Education faculty course, but that's definitely got a lot of good stuff in there for you. The other thing too is this website here, support.office.com/Teams. This is your Microsoft Teams help and learning. So things like people asking questions about, meetings and calls, about Teams and channels, etc. This is definitely the page to go and find all that sort of information out. Remembering to Microsoft Remote Learning, aka.ms Microsoft Remote Learning. Our webinars continue at aka.ms/Vic Events, and also support documents for educators are found at support.microsoft.com/education. If you want today's slides and recordings, very soon I will dump today's slides and the video into a folder and you can access it, but you can also access our past webinars at aka.ms/DET webinars. All right, so write that one down, aka.ms/DET webinars. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter at aka.ms/MEC newsletter. And if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and also on Facebook. Just look Troy Waller Microsoft, and you'll certainly find me easy enough. So on that note, we're going to say goodbye for the day. I know that Anna's got to be in her next webinar working hard, and I'm going to take off too. So thank you very much for being a part of this. Remember, share it out to your school leaders. Give them this as a solution for collaboration online while we're all working from home. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.